This is Amplify You, the podcast about you discovering your message and broadcasting it to the world. If you're a coach, author, or speaker, you'll want to tune in. If you're looking for the best return on your time investment to get your message out to the world in a bigger way, we're giving you full access and behind the scenes look of how we're running our podcast, how our clients have found success, and what you can do to launch your podcast today. The world needs your message. I'm Michelle Abraham, the host. Join my family as we unleash your unique genius and find the connections you need to launch your adventure today. Join us and let's get amplified. All right. So now we've been talking about podcast hosting and hosting your own podcast, which is amazing, right? And I know a lot of you guys want to do that. But one of the things I think would be good to do is really check in and see how many of you guys have been a podcast guest before. How many of you guys have been a podcast before? Put a yes in the chat if you've been on a podcast before. Amazing. Look at all those people. Great. Has anyone never been on a podcast before? If you haven't, put no in the chat. I want to see where's our newbie podcast guests. And I'm hoping today you get to be on one, be on your first one. All right. I see one no in the chat, couple of no's in the chat. I hope you guys get to be on podcasts today. You're VIPs. You all get to be on a podcast. Awesome. Great. All right. We got a mix of everyone in there. Perfect. So one of the things I love about podcast guesting is we get to go, and if you think about podcast guesting as back in the day when we had to link back and forth to like backlinks, right? So you have your website and it links back to you, and there's all these backlinks out there. It's like spider web. So I think of podcasting in that way. It's kind of like you going out there and then you're putting your message out there on another show, and then it's leading back to you and your business. So you're creating a spider web out there. There's so many great benefits of being a podcast guest. One, you get to get your message out there in the world. You get to have your authority. You get to become an authority out there, right? So people come to you asking you questions, and there's nothing better than showing up to a conversation to have with someone that's working with you. When they get on the call, they're like, I've heard you on a podcast. I know you. I know you're the person for me. There's no sales involved. It's just a casual conversation because they've heard you. They like you. They know you. They trust you. So that's one of the things I love about podcast guesting. The other thing about podcast guesting is when we live in a world where time and attention is one of our most valuable assets. Would you guys agree with that? Time and attention is one of our most valuable assets. Did you know that if you were posting on social media, posting your message on social media, it's within seconds, right? On the scroll. If you're posting things on YouTube, you get about 4 minutes and 20 seconds of someone's time and attention before they turn it off and move on to something else. But did you know in podcasting, anyone want to guess how many minutes of someone's attention you get when they're listening to a podcast? Any guesses? Let's see. 22. Ooh, that's pretty close, Melissa. You must have heard me say that before. Pretty close. 20. Yep. 15, 20. 20. Yep. So 20 minutes of someone's time. So they say the average person will listen to a podcast for 20 minutes. That's pretty awesome. That's a lot of time and attention, not to mention that you're putting your information out there on a platform where people are always listening 24/7. So different than if you were to get into a print magazine or into a newspaper, your ad would be gone in old news the next day, where people can go and listen to your podcast episode any day of the week, 24/7, it's out there and people are listening. So what other marketing materials are out there working for you other than maybe your website 24/7 and people are going to it constantly and hearing your message? That's why I'm passionate about podcast guesting. Podcast guesting is a fantastic opportunity. Now, to be a great podcast guest, we've come up with a couple of tips that I want to share with you today. All right, so I'm going to pull it up here so I have it in front of me. So tips for being a podcast guest. Now, how many of you guys put in the chat, yes, if you're going to be a podcast guest today on a show, you've upgraded to VIP and you're going to be a podcast guest today. Awesome. Well, these are some of the things that you can implement today while you're about to get on a show or before you go get on a show. Now, you might not have time to do this one today, and that's go and listen to the show. Anytime I'm being asked to be a guest on a show, I'm going to listen to the show first because I want to make sure that it's a good fit. I also don't want to be surprised when the podcast host maybe, starts swearing and I'm not uncomfortable with that, or maybe they have a topic that's not quite the right fit for me. I want to be prepared. So I want to go and listen to a podcast episode before I ever go on as a guest. And this is especially true. Sometimes podcast hosts have the same question they ask every single show. And if you don't know the answer to that show, so imagine the question is, hey, what's your favorite book? And they ask that question in every episode. And then you went on their podcast as a guest and they asked you what your favorite book was, but you weren't prepared for that question and you couldn't come up with an answer. You feel pretty silly. So you want to make sure that you've listened to an episode or two at least of the show. And then another great thing, I've mentioned this already a few times today, is if you go and give the podcast host a review on iTunes and review their show, say how great the show is, which is great. All right. Number 3, I like to say is incorporate other episodes into your show. And Alex Sanfilippo, who's going to come up here in a little bit here, he was on my podcast and I stopped the podcast because I was like, Alex, that was one of the best things a guest has ever done on my podcast. And he went back and referred to another episode I had that he had listened to. He brought that conversation into this current podcast. That's really helpful for podcasters because you're bridging their podcast episodes together. And it also shows that he did his homework as a guest and he was super prepared to bring that conversation into our episode. I love that one. Number 4 is speak in media bytes. So when you're getting asked the same questions on podcasts, like tell us about your story or how you got started, make sure you're answering in really bite-sized 2 to 3 sentences. If you've ever been around Kimberly's 20-word intros, that's a great way of answering a question, right? With a very succinct 1 or 2 sentence answer, or in her case, 20 words, right? It's a really great way to have something that's quotable. So you heard me say your uniqueness is your genius. So that's something I say on podcasts because it's quotable. It's a media bite. People can grab that piece of content and pull it and use it in an audiogram, or they can use it in a Facebook quote, or however else they're going to be promoting the episode. So speaking in those kind of chunks is really good. The other way of speaking in a chunk is like the 3 ways that you can get over your fear of being on a podcast. Speaking with like numbers in front of your content is also really great. It's a high perceived value. Number 5 is high value pack content, just like I said. So high value pack content, meaning you're sharing something that is in people's minds, you got a lot of value out of it. So right now in this segment, I'm sharing about podcast guesting and 10 tips for being the best podcast guest. So you're getting high value because you're getting 10 really concrete tips. I hope you guys are getting value out of this. Are you? You liking these tips? All right, we're down to the last 5 tips. Good, I saw a few jazz hands there. Awesome. Compliment the host and the audience. So if you're coming onto a podcast and say for example, my Blissful Parenting podcast, my audience is school-age parents of school-age kids. And so compliment the audience and say, your parents are working really hard and they're doing a great job. You can say something like that, or you can also compliment the host and say something nice about the host, or compliment them on, an interview they did with an expert that you really liked. So say something nice, be complimentary on the podcast. Number 7 is be short, succinct, and impactful with your words. So when a podcast host asks you, hey, can you tell us a little bit about what you are, tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started. That is not your gate opened for you to tell a 15-minute rambling story. That is your gate to share 2 to 3 to 5 sentences of very succinct content about how it relates also to their audience. So if you can share your story in a way that it relates to the audience you're speaking in front of, even better. And I see Kristen's asking in the chat if there's a handout for this. Well, guess what? I do have a PDF for you on this. So don't worry, I'll be giving it to you after I'm done going through them. And number Number 8 is be personable, right? So be personable, be friendly. As you can see, as I'm talking, I'm smiling. Believe it or not, when you're on a podcast, even if it's not on video and it's just on audio, you can hear a smile in someone's voice when they're speaking, right? So you want to be friendly, outgoing, personable, and then don't just give 1 or 2 word answers. I know I just said to be succinct and powerful with your words, but also give them, have it be conversational. So yes, I can definitely smile when you're talking. Okay, so that was number 9, smile so the audience can hear. And then number 10 is the big FU. And I laugh when I say this because it is the big FU. It is the follow up. So follow up after you've been on a show with someone. Thank them for having you on. Also, you heard those 3 questions that Chuck did in his presentation. You can ask those 3 questions. How can I help you in your business, right? Follow up. It's not a transaction. So going on someone's podcast is not a one-time transaction. You want to treat it. You've heard every speaker say it today. You want to treat it like a transformational experience. It's a relationship building experience. It's not the first or last time you're going to hear from that podcast host or guest, right? So this is all happens in the follow-up. Can I help you find another podcast guest? Are you looking for more guests? Are you looking to be on shows? Can I connect you with someone that I know? How can I help serve your audience even better? So this all happens in the follow-up. And if you don't do the follow-up, it is like the big FU, right? So that's why we call it the big FU, the follow-up. All right, say yes in the chat if you'd like to have a copy of this PDF that I just went through with your top 10 tips for being a great podcast guest. All right, and you twisted my rubber arm. I will put it in there. Did you also know that Amplify You does help you get booked on podcasts? At Podapalooza Day, here we helped you get on a few podcasts. Amplify You does have a done-for-you service where if you don't want to be bothered with doing the research and finding the shows to be on, and you just want to show up and do your best and help us connect you with the shows and get you booked on, then that's a done-for-you service that we can do as well. And if Jason's going to put his link to his calendar in the chat here, if you want to talk to him about us helping you guys book you on some shows as a podcast guest, and really helping you accelerate your expertise and your authority, and also connecting it back to your business. We would love to support you with that. We have a lot of podcast guests and podcast hosts that we do that with right now. So Jason will put his information in the chat. You can connect with him for an interview or for a conversation about if that's a fit for you. And during our next speaker, I'll upload the PDF to the chat so I can share it with you, the top 10 tips for being a great podcast guest. Was this helpful, guys? Is this good to know this stuff? Awesome. Okay, good. Good. All right. Next up, we have another amazing guest for you. Oh, I love the thank you, Adrian. That's so cute. All right. Let me just pull up my screen here. We have another great guest coming up. Just want to make sure he is here. We can pull him on stage. All right. We have got Alex Sanfilippo coming up in just a couple of minutes. And in the meantime, guys, I have one more thing to share with you. Now, how many of you guys, if Brene Brown or Brendon Burchard called you up and was like, hey, yeah, I would love to have you on my podcast, Michelle. And for the first many years, I would be like, oh my gosh, I am not ready to go on their show. How many of you guys feel like that? Do you feel like if they were to call you right now, do you have your bio ready? Do you have your headshot ready? Do you have your all your social media links ready? Do you have your speaker one sheet ready? Do you have all that stuff ready? I know I sure didn't for many, many times. And so just before Podapalooza, Kimberly and I decided, hey, it would be really a great idea to do an event called Get Media Ready. So Kimberly and I created the Get Media Ready workshop, and it was so much fun. We are going to do it again, but we're also going to give you the recording to it, and we're going to share with you what we offered at the end of it, because I think is really helpful for anyone who's looking to get into podcast guesting and booking. So it is a package where we're going to actually find 20 shows that are really helpful for you to get on. We're going to find 20 shows for you that fit your audience. We are also going to get you booked on, get you booked on 2 shows. Okay, so we're going to get you booked on 2 shows. We're going to get you listed on one of our listings. So I'm just going to show you quickly here, and then we'll bring Alex on in 1 second. Just want to share it with you here. Okay, you're going to get a year's listing on a Potapalooza version of this. So this is what we have at Amplify You. We have all of our guests that we do bookings for on our show. They each get listed on here. They've got their biography, their questions, their freebies in here, questions to ask them, useful links, all those kind of things. So you'll get a listing like this on the Potapalooza version of this for a year. Okay, so we're going to get you 10 or 20 shows that are a fit for you to reach out. And then, sorry, I'm giving everyone anxiety over my tabs on my computer screen. Got a lot of things going on today on those tabs. Yes, so you're going to get those 20. We're going to connect you with the 20, give you a list of 20 shows that we think you'd be a great fit for. We're going to book you on 2 interviews. That would be on our own shows on Blissful Parenting, Amplify You, Positive Shifts, Potapalooza, one of those shows. And then we're also going to list you in the directory. So we're going to help you get your page looking beautiful like this. So, and it can connect to your own booking link. Does that sound like a good stuff, you guys? Do you think you're interested in that? So that's $297. I'm going to put the link in the chat while Alex is talking, because I want to bring him on stage right away. If that's something you guys are interested in doing, awesome. Please feel free to jump in and do that with us. It was so much fun, that workshop, and it helps everyone get prepared for being on podcast and getting more interviews.